Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of the 2024 tax year slips filing webinar series. My name is Sarka Hodja. I'm a CPA, CGA, and a senior product manager with TaxCycle. In this installment, part 2, we're going to be preparing a basic T-slips. I'm going to be reviewing some of the new capital gains reporting that CRA is included on the new forms. We're going to talk about review tools, summaries, electronic signatures, and then filing the slips return using the internet file transfer, how to print your slips and labels, how to update workflow and keep track of your file, invoicing, and then we will go back and talk about how you amend slips. So just a few updates before I jump into the demo. Last year, CRA added second additional CPP QBP information onto the slips. So we'll need to report those where applicable in box 16A and 17A on the T4 slip. And also there are a couple new codes for reporting related to exempt income under the Indian Act. So that's code 94 for our PP contributions and code 95 for union dues. And that is for employment income that is tax exempt and reported in code 71. Also, some additional new boxes for capital gains. So CRA has an administrative policy that they will be administering the capital gains draft legislation that was released in August of 2024. They've added a number of new reporting boxes so that you can report the realization of certain capital gains or income that triggers capital gains that happened before June 25th and after June 24th. So those new codes on the T4 are 38, 90, 39, 91, 41, and 92. So some of those you probably recognize from last year. They've just made that separation between before and after the change in the capital gains inclusion rates. On the T5, that will impact box 18 and new box 34. And we're going to start, I just want to mention that I'm going to spend most of my time in today's webinar on the T4 slip, but the things that I'm showing you here today work virtually the same across all of the slips modules. So we have the T4, the T5, added last year or the year before with the T2202, T5018, NR4, and a couple of RL slips that we support in TaxCycle. So if I go back into my file, here's where we left off from the first webinar. On the info page, just once again, remind everybody that if you want to file releves, you need to go down to the filing section and select yes. And that applies for any recipients who are employed in or living in Quebec. You want to make sure that if you're filling out other slips in here, that you're also completing the sections here that apply that you want to have updated on the individual slips within your file. And a new thing that was added to all of the 2024 modules is preferred name. So that was there in T1. We've now added it to all of the modules. This information gets calculated over on the engagement form here under engagement salutation. And then this can be changed here and it will update wherever we've referenced that in any of the correspondence items. By default, if you include a title, so in this case, Ms. Sims, it's going to use the formal. If you don't use Ms., it will use first name. So that is how the new preferred name will work, or does work. So last, where we left off, we imported all of our T-slips, so we have all of our data is already in here. If I go to one of the T4 slips, we'll just do a quick tour of the data entry form if you're manually keying the information. So the first part is the employee ID information, which will include all of the relevant details that CRA needs in order to be for you to mail the slip and for CRA to recognize who it belongs to. The next section is the filing information. So the type of slip, if we are coming back in here, this is where you can change it to amended or canceled if you need to make an adjustment after the fact. The tax year is auto-populated from the info page and calculated for you. Province of employment, we set on info so that it'll populate automatically for everybody the same. This is also calculated applicable pension. See the RC18 we can trigger to connect with this employee or the T2200 as well. I'm going to cover that in part 3 of our webinar series. The carry forward slip, you can check if you've got an employee that you know is coming back next year, you can carry them forward. If you know that they're no longer going to be employed in the coming year, you can uncheck this so that when you carry forward your slip, your file next year, it will exclude this particular employee if they're no longer selected to carry forward. Applicable exemptions are over here on this side. So if they're CPP, EI, or PPIP exempt, you can select that here. The box for employer offered dental benefits is here, and I selected number 3 on the info form. And so that by default will show here for everybody, but I can update that for this particular employee if I need to. Employment code would be next. And then we have our type of pay period and number of pensionable pay periods in the year. So if for some reason they don't have all of their pensionable pay periods, you'll want to update this to make sure that the calculations for CPP and EI are correct. Reduced EI, we will talk about in part 3. Ignoring adjustments, so we had selected in our options that we're going to allow TaxCycle to adjust the CPP and EI contributions and PPIP contributions based on the calculated values that they should be in case there was an error made in payroll. Within our thresholds and our selected preferences. If you want to ignore that on this one slip, we would just select here to ignore adjustments. Everyone else will still be adjusted. This one will be ignored if I have this selected. And then I can also exclude this slip from filing. So I might have an employee who took a hiatus of some kind or sabbatical and might be coming back in a subsequent year. So I can still carry them forward and just exclude them from filing here. Transmission history will show in this table. There'll be an RL table as well that will show if it's relevant. Then we get down into our slip data. So I showed you in part 1 that if I've carried forward a file or if I've imported a file with prior year values, those will show in my prior year. In this case, I didn't include prior years in my data import, so that's why this is showing as blank. But all of my employment details are here, and I've also entered all of the other taxable allowances and benefits that I didn't have included in my spreadsheet. And I added a slip-specific note. So if I wanted a footnote just on this one employee, this is where we're going to add it, as opposed to the one that's on info, which goes on everybody's slip. Next, in the slip detail, we have a payroll view. So this is going to show you a summary of all of the information that you entered in payroll that's relevant in calculating your net pay for the year. And you can use this to reconcile against the bookkeeping records to make sure that the net pay for the year matches what the company actually paid each of those employees. A little further down, then we get a view of the slip and what is going to be shown on the slip for this particular employee. And if I keep going down, you'll see there's my slip-specific footnote that I entered. So this is the same regardless of which slip module you're in. It's going to look exactly the same. If we have a relevé, so Chantal is in Quebec, but we have province of employment as Alberta. So if we update that to Quebec, then you'll see that now I have my relevé transmission history. And if I go down, I now also have my relevé slip data that I can enter here for Chantal. So in this case, I need to make some adjustments. We'll just fix that. So it was giving me an audit message because it was well over my threshold of tolerance that I entered in my adjustments thresholds. And so now I've corrected that. You'll see that the audit message has been cleared. And I have a few other audit messages that I'm going to have to go through. I wanted to, before we get into review messages, I wanted to also show you the dynamic slip summary, which is also a way that you can data enter information once you have, where do we, slip summary. So we want to go to T4 slips along the side here, or you can hit F4 to get the search bar to get here. So why I say this is a dynamic summary, anything that I edit here on this T4 slip summary will also get updated on the T4 individual data entry. These fields are linked. We don't want to adjust anything that is in blue, which is calculated, because that will create an override and we want to avoid that. But if, for instance, I wanted to quickly update something for all of my employees and I don't want to have to toggle through each individual slip up in the top, I can just come in here, and if I right click on the top, I can manage my columns. I can add, maybe I want to see my actual CPP contributions here next to my adjusted ones. So I can just drag that over and drop it in here. Maybe I want to see, maybe I want my dental benefits to show here, just to make it easy to confirm what everyone is. And if I click OK, it's going to now show me those additional fields that I want. I can organize these however I like by just clicking and dragging. This is also a printable worksheet, but it's super handy if you want to just quickly data enter things for your employees. So I just wanted to show you that. I see that Kevin is missing employer benefits information here. And so that's part of my review message. So you'll see that I can't file unless that's entered. That is a blocking audit message. And then I have a few down here that I need to clear. So if we go to our review tab, you'll see all of the review messages that are getting triggered that we're going to need to clear in order to be able to transmit this file. The ones that are important are the ones in red. These are blockers. So I can either click on here and fix it, or I can see that I've got it open over here. So we'll just go ahead and select the one I think that's relevant. And then we had some missing information that we contacted the client about. So now we can go ahead and enter that missing information. And I'm just going to make that zeros. So we're just going to go through each of these one by one, and it's reminding me that I also need to update my T4 summary. So I'm going to click on this and open up my T4 summary. All of the information that can be calculated is updated on here already for me. So it's going to calculate everything that I recorded on the employee slips, and it's going to calculate what should have been remitted for the employer portions. And then I'm going to double check with CRA, and I'm going to put in the actual amount of the remittance in here. So let's just say we're reasonably close. And it'll calculate the difference. CRA doesn't care about anything that is a difference of $2 or less. So we're good there now. And I also need to do the RL summary because I had the one employee that I'm reporting for in Quebec. These are coming from another spot. So we'll need to make sure that I think here. No. All right, sorry, I'm not as familiar with the RLs, but so you'll want to make sure that those are updated before you transmit your RL forms. And then we come back to Kevin is missing some information. So let's go to Kevin's slip. He's missing an address. So we're just going to go ahead and clear that. So now you can see that's disappeared, and we're missing some amount for other. So if we scroll down, we'll see that we didn't enter an amount for other. Let's assume this doesn't apply. So I'm just going to Control D to delete that row that's not applicable for Kevin. And then I've got an override on Chantal, province of employment as Quebec, and that's correct. So I'm going to select yes, that check mark here to clear that override to say I'm okay with that. And then we have, oh yes, so we need to finish up Chantal's RL1 slip. So we're going to come down here and we're going to pick up the amount from the top. So I've got a quick fix here I can use, and income tax withheld is not entered. And that is probably why my RL summary was not working. So let's say we had another amount of income tax withheld. I'm going to enter it there. And other benefits, it's saying, well, you reported something on the T4. We need to update that here. So yes. And then we have that information entered for Chantal. That goes away. We have no postal code here. So let's enter that. And let's go to the invalid social insurance number. That corrected. And we have one more other. So again, let's just say that we're going to Control D to get rid of that row. And then I have adjustments that exceed my threshold. For Kristen. Okay, so we got to go to Kristen's slip. There we go. So now we can see there's my audit message for under contributions to CPP, and we're out by $5. So I need to decide, is that too big of a threshold for me? But it's underreported, so I probably want to fix that. And I'm going to say, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to accept the adjustments, even though they're over my threshold. And then I have all of my T4s. Review messages are now cleared. So if I go to my transmit pane, T4 is now ready to transmit. And if I open this up, I can go ahead. I have 42 slips, it's telling me, and I can go ahead and click Transmit Now. And when I do that, it's going to open up a window, which I'll just... and it's telling me that those services are closed right now because they are doing their annual update. which is fine. That'll be open on the 13th. And what will happen is you'll have the file here will get attached, the XML file that it's going to transmit. You'll go through the page to accept the transmitter number, and web access code is here that we're going to use. If you didn't put it in your options, you'll have to enter it manually in the window. And then you will go ahead and go past the first page. On the second page, you'll have the option to confirm and submit. Once you've submitted, it's going to scrape the submission number and drop it in here, and then it will save that in your file. So I'm just going to close this window to cancel transmission. And we're going to put in my tracking pane that it did actually transmit. So we're going to assign it a confirmation number here. Unfortunately, CRA doesn't provide us with a test environment for slips, so we will have to make do with what we have here today. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead also, now that I'm in the workflow section, we're going to just talk about tracking progress in my file. So in my case, I did send out an engagement letter. I'm going to say that I have one that was signed and on file from a previous year. And I don't need to worry about the return being carried forward because it's going to set this to complete anyway. But we'll automatically update that if it's relevant. I did receive all my source documents. I'm not doing a TaxCycle file, and I'm going to say all my data entry is complete, and I did do my review. And my client has reviewed and completed it. So I did jump ahead to transmission. Ordinarily, we'd want to send a copy of the transmission and filing along with a copy of the slips to our client and have them confirm and approve that transmission. So in that step, we would go to the print section, and we can go to the employer file copy here, and we can print a copy of that and send that off to the client to review and confirm. If you want an electronic signature, it is supported on the summary. So you could send it through DocuSign or tax folder for electronic signature. And if you're doing that, then you would just go and make sure that your print settings are set up for PDF, and you're going to save it to wherever you would normally save it to. Email is going to be whichever one you're using for requesting that electronic signature. And then you're going to select the email template that's going to drop in to the request. That is under message. And so here we probably want to ask for an e-signature. I'm not going to do these two here to ask to upload or invite new client because I'm just asking for a signature on this one form. Make sure my file name is what I want it to be. And I want to make sure down here that this information for the signing out officer, that email address that's coming from info, and the phone number is correct for this request. And if I'm happy with this, I can go ahead and send it. That will create the electronic signature request for this file. I can also set this to complete additional tasks before I send it at this stage, or I can do it as part of the file, my own personal file copy that I want to keep for my own purposes. So here I might want to set it to complete something in my workflow. Maybe I want return completed to be set as completed or planning completed. So I can do that here, and I can save this as part of my settings for this file copy if that's the one that I want to use predominantly for this particular print set. So I am going to close that. So that's my T-slips. If I want to print other T-slips, I'm just going to click on this drop-down arrow. And here is where I get my other print sets. So if I had created 2200 forms, I can get them here. T4As, T4PS, and so on and so forth. So this is how I toggle between the various slips that are available in my file that I'm going to need to print. So that covers tracking and workflow. And you'll notice that anything that I updated on the engagement form will also, for the relevant dates, will also flow up here into my workflow and will be available in my client manager as well. And we do calculate the filing deadline for you. All right, so I did skip ahead and I did the transmission before we got our client approval, not the order we want to do it in, but we've covered both now. So I also just cleared the review messages for RL, so this would be ready to transmit now. If I wanted to go ahead and do that, I have one slip that would be transmitted there. I can't do that here because they do have a live website, and so and this works exactly the same as e-file. So once you click transmit, it's just going to send the file off to Revenue Quebec for you. Now that I have filed everything, I want to create my client copies that are going to go out, and I probably want to create my office copies. So I'm going to go to print, and I can print off that employer file copy, and I can also use this or create a new print set for myself for my office copy. Or maybe I want just this and I'll share a copy of this with my client as well. You can send it to tax folder as a shared file, or share it, print it out to a printer if you like, or you might have some other way of sharing files with your clients. So then you can print it to a PDF and share it that way. And we already covered that if I need to look at the other files, I can just toggle this and up here to find the other slips that I might need to print. Once I'm happy with that, I can publish to SlipSync, which we will cover tomorrow, or sorry, the next day in part 3 of this webinar series. And now I've got my personal file copy that I need to keep for my own business. I have my client copy that I've sent out, and I don't want to have any more changes made to this file. So I can go to security and I can lock my file. So that means that no more changes will be able to be made to this file unless I unlock it and come back in here to do that. So I'm just going to unlock it again. I'm going to go back to my home tab. I wanted to also show you how to print labels. So there is a label printer here under client. You can print labels. So we have two options. If you go under the prepare tab and come down to the correspondence section, you can print a single label. So this will allow me to print a single label for the slip that I'm currently on. Or I can go to client print label, and here I can print all of my slip labels if I'm not using a window envelope. And I can just send that, I configure this with my label printer, whatever I'm using, and the type of label. So there's a whole host of different label types available in here. And then I can send it to print my labels this way, and then print all of my labels at the same time. So now I have my file copy. Everything is ready and sent out. I'm going to want to bill my client. So if you're using the invoicing here in TaxCycle, you go down to the billing worksheet. And this is where we're going to make sure that this is billed the way that we want it to. So it's pulling in my options information. It's calculating the number of slips and my cost per slip, and I've come down to an amount for preparing the T-slips for this client. Let's say I am happy with that. I have the option down here also to trigger a review message if I want to compare it to whatever I billed them last year. So last year's amounts, if I carried forward, should appear down here in this prior year amounts. And then if I put in, maybe I want to know if it's a 5% difference from last year's billing, I can add that in here. And then it's going to compare the amounts here with the amounts that you're invoicing this year and trigger an audit message for you to look at if it is outside of your tolerance level. So once I've completed my billing worksheet, I can either post it over, I'm connected to Xero, I can post it over to Xero. You can also post it over to QBO. And then you can include the invoice with your client package or send it out separately. We've also separated out the payments worksheet this year, so no more unlocking the billing worksheet to recognize payments. You can just add in your payments, one or many, however many installments your client makes with you, to record whatever balance is owing. And this also rolls up into Client Manager, so you can manage your receivables that way. All right. So we also, I wanted to just mention the reconciliation worksheet. So when we set up our options in part 1, we set up some T4 adjustment options. And so that's on this adjustment options worksheet here. If I deviate from this, it's going to give me an audit message saying this doesn't match my options that I set up for defaults. That's fine. I can go ahead and clear that if I want to make that different, or just use that to make sure that all my files are consistently the same with whatever I have in options. And there's the tolerance level that I've set for those there. I can also, before I transmit, come in here to the reconciliation, which we is similar to what we had for the T4 slip summary. But what this does is it's going to take all the information that is inputted in for the T4 slip specifically, and it's going to tell me if there's a variance. So I can quickly see here what the impact is of all of those adjustments that have been made and determine whether or not I need to make any adjusting entries in my books, or if I need to come back in here and see if perhaps something might have been entered incorrectly. So now the client comes back, it is a few weeks later, and they say, oh, I forgot to tell you about this employee that I paid by check and didn't put into the payroll system. So now we have to come back in here, and we're going to need to do an adjusting entry. So if we scroll back up, we can create a new slip to transmit. So we just add that in here as a new slip. Or if we have an existing slip that needs to be amended, we go to that slip. We're going to go up to type of slip. We're going to select that it's now an amended slip. We're going to go ahead and make whatever changes we need to make. So maybe they had some other income we forgot to add in here. And that means we're also going to have to update these amounts. All right. So now if I go, one more step. We have to go to info, and we have to go to the filing section, and we have to put in an explanatory note for any slips that we're filing that are getting amended. And so I'll just put a note in there. And then we can go to our Transmit tab. We're going to open this up. We're going to dismiss the previous filing. And then it's going to put us back into a transmittable state. This is showing in my demo because we don't have confirmation numbers on each individual slip. If I was able to actually transmit that, that will clear itself to 0. And then it would just show the amended slip that we're transmitting. And we can transmit that now and go through the same process we went through to transmit the original slips. And then that will be completed. We print off our amended copies and complete our file the way that we did before. And that was everything that I wanted to cover in today's webinar. Thank you for joining me here today. I hope you'll join me for part 3. Have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.